The beauty of college sports is the parity. It feels like each and every year there is a new team that emerges as a contender. There's a new head coach that bursts onto the scene and makes an immediate impact with his new program. This year will be no different. And with the 12-team playoff format, I think it gives us a better chance to see some of this parity and see new teams representing the playoffs in a big way. Last year, nobody was predicting Indiana, SMU, or Arizona State to make anywhere close to the playoffs, but they went on a run and were really good last year. In today's video, I will be talking about 5 teams that I think could go on a run in the 2025 season and potentially find themselves in the college football playoff race. I'm not saying that these 4 teams, or 5 teams, I should say, are going to be playoff teams, but I think they're going to be competitive and could certainly be a contender to make it to that final weekend. If you enjoy college football and NFL draft content, I highly recommend you hit that like and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton and lets me know you guys are enjoying the videos. Leave a comment and let me know which teams you guys think are being really slept on in the 2025 college football season. And without further ado, let's get into it. Of the Power 4 conferences, it seems to be pretty consensus that the ACC is the weakest of the 4. However, I still believe there are some solid contenders at the top of this conference, with Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech, and even many people expecting Florida State to return to relevancy. But one team who I truly think could go on a run that I really have not seen enough people talking about are the Duke Blue Devils. Duke was quietly one of the better teams in the ACC in 2024. Under first-year head coach Manny Diaz, the Blue Devils finished with a 9-4 record. Diaz did a really good job of helping take control of that locker room and establish a winning defense. Diaz was hired as the former defensive coordinator from Penn State, and he had built some incredible defenses in the Big Ten that consistently was producing NFL talent. And in his first year in the ACC, he did that with this Duke defense. Per PFF, Duke was the 25th best defense in all of college football last year. I think what makes this Blue Devils defense so special is their secondary. They have 2 legitimate NFL players on this roster, and cornerback Chandler Rivers, who is one of the best corners in the entire country. He's got phenomenal instincts, he's got really good athleticism, and moves incredibly well. And then you've got Terry Moore, who once again is a fantastic safety with good ball skills and the ability to come downhill as a blitzer. They are bringing back basically the same defense from last year, and they are returning 60% of last year's overall roster. The biggest reason, however, why I'm so high on this Duke team this year is I expect this offense to really take a step in 2025. Malik Murphy transferred out to Oregon State, and for Duke fans, I think you should be pretty excited about that. Murphy was not a very good quarterback for this Duke team last year. He struggled with accuracy. He had some turnovers in big time moments, and they improved their quarterback room pretty drastically by adding former Tulane quarterback Darian Mensah. Mensah was phenomenal for the Green Wave last year, and he really flashed some good traits. He has the ability to process really well. He's got great size, and I think he can be a legitimate #1 draft pick at the next level. Duke is not a perfect team by any means. I think their offensive line needs some improvement, and they do have a lot of unprovenness in the wide receiver room. But I think they're going to be able to run the ball with Jaquez Moore, and I think they run an offense that really plays to their favor. They're very up-tempo. They love to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, and if the defense can remain elite and the offense can be a little bit more consistent, I think Duke is going to be a little bit better than they were last year and have a legitimate case to be in the ACC championship game. I think this is a fantastic team. I think they're well coached, and I think they are going to be a big-time player in the ACC this year. The Big 12 seems to be the most unpredictable conference, And I think you could talk yourself into legitimately 5 or 6 different teams. I've seen people talk about Utah, I've seen people talk about Kansas, Colorado, Baylor, and that's the team I'm going to go with. I'm really high on the Baylor Bears this year. To the diehard college football fans, this isn't a hot take. Baylor was one of the hottest teams in the country at the last half of last season, but to the casual fans, I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to what was going on down in Waco, but I think this team could potentially be a legitimate contender in the Big 12 this year. Baylor went 8-5 last season and lost in the Texas Bowl to LSU, but the second half of the year is where Baylor really gained their momentum. They started the season 2-4 and rattled off 6 straight wins, and they were pretty dominant in those games. A big reason for Baylor's success was their offensive attack, where they genuinely have multiple playmakers and contributors at all 3 levels of this offense. It starts at quarterback, where if you guys have followed the channel, you guys would know. Sawyer Robertson is my dude. He's my preseason QB1 for the 2026 NFL Draft, and I think he's one of the most slept on quarterbacks in all of college football. He threw for over 3,000 yards last year and 28 touchdowns to just 8 interceptions, and I think he is a guy that can get to another level. I didn't really think he showed a lot. I thought the deep ball accuracy still needed some work, and I thought he needed some improvement on the ground. But I genuinely think he can be a Heisman finalist next season. But it's not just Robertson that I love about this offense. Bryson Washington was a 1,000-yard rusher last season and was one of the best running backs in the conference. Josh Cameron had 750 yards and 10 touchdowns on the year. Baylor has the playmakers. They added Kobe Prentice. They're bringing back a lot of the same guys. But where I think Baylor needs to improve and where I think they can take that next step is their pass defense. This wasn't a dynamic enough pass rush, nor was it a great secondary. But this team did a fantastic job of adding pieces up front to their defense at all 3 levels. The addition of linebacker Phoenix Jackson from Fresno State is one of the best additions any team made in the portal. I think he can be a legitimate blitz threat, he's got really good athletic range, and he allows Aranda's defense to play multiple. They were lacking some firepower from that linebacker spot last year, and I'm really excited to see what Phoenix Jackson can do. But they also added guys like Calvin Simpson Hunt from Ohio State, Devin Turner from Northwestern, and Tyler Turner from Oregon. I think all 3 of those guys could be big-time players in this team's secondary. This is a team that I think is going to be much improved defensively, and they're an offense that was red hot the second half of last season. They run an air raid offense, and if Sawyer Robertson can clean up just a little bit of that deep ball accuracy, I think Baylor can win the Big 12 this year. I really do. They don't have the easiest schedule in the world, but I think this is a really fun team, and I'm going to be excited to watch them heading into 2025. In the group of 5, many people are just penciling in Boise State or Tulane to be the representative in the college football playoff. And while it likely will be one of those 2 teams, I do think that there are some legitimate sleepers. James Madison is in the mix. I think Old Dominion will be better this year. I even think you could see Southern Miss get in the mix with Charles Huff coming over. However, the team that I'm going to talk about today that I just don't see a lot of people mention are the San Jose State Spartans. The Spartans went 7-6 last year, but if you look at their games a little bit closer, they were a lot more competitive than that. The Spartans had a first-year head coach after Brett Brennan took the Arizona job, and they performed pretty well given the expectations. Now, it certainly helps when you have Nick Nash, who very easily could have won the Biletnikoff, but this is a team that I think can be sneaky. They're returning 57% of last year's roster, and I think they can make some noise. They're going to need more consistency from the quarterback room, and they're going to need to eliminate turnovers, which is a big issue for them. But this is a really good defense. They were very aggressive up front. They love to dial different disguised blitzes, and they play a lot of press coverage, which makes it really difficult. I'm excited to see what this defense can look like, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball with Floyd Chalk. They're over-under 7.5 wins, and I think that's a fair bet because I do think San Jose State will be playing in the Mountain West Championship game. UNLV is a very competitive team. Colorado State's a good team, but I really like the San Jose State roster. I think they're a team that is going to be good. I think they've got upside and are definitely a team to watch in 2025. The Big Ten is absolutely loaded for another year, and I think you could make a genuine case that the Big Ten at this point is just as good in terms of talent as the SEC. But I don't see a lot of people talking about the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who I think can be a really good team, and they were a really good team in 2024. Minnesota was really interesting last year. They went 8-5 on the season, but once again, if you look at some of their games a little bit closer, this is easily a team that could have won 11 games. They lost really close matchups with North Carolina, Michigan, and Penn State, all one possession games that easily could have flipped in their favor. This team, like many in the Big Ten, are built off their incredibly tough defense, and they're returning multiple key starters from last year. Coy Parrish is the big name for this team, who was one of the best freshmen in the country last year, and he looks to take another step in his development. But I also really like defensive tackle Anthony Smith, who I think could be a monster up front for this team. Defensively, I think they're set. They play a lot of cover four, they bring a variety of different blitzing looks, and where this team has more of the questions for me is going to be offensively. Darius Taylor is going to be able to do damage. He's one of the best running backs in the country, and his contact balance is phenomenal. I think he is a clear-cut number one guy for this team, and they're going to lean on him largely this season, but you're going to need some better play from the quarterback. Max Brosmer was solid last year, but they're relying on a redshirt freshman in Drake Lindsey. If they can get good play out of Lindsey, I think this team's going to be really good. I also worry about the offensive line, where you lost both of your starting tackles from last year, and while they had a pretty decent transfer portal cycle and brought in new talent on the line, it is certainly something to monitor. But I think Minnesota is going to be a 10-win team in the Big Ten this year. If you look at their schedule, it's incredibly favorable, with their two toughest matchups coming on the road at Ohio State and at Oregon later in the season. But this is a very favorable schedule. Their defense is going to be really good. And with the offensive attack and their ability to run the football, I think Minnesota is a sneaky team that is going to win 10 games in 2025. Finally, in the SEC, it has to be Vanderbilt, right? I just don't see anybody talking about Vanderbilt like I think we should be. Vandy was really good last season. I know their record was 7-6 and they were 3-5 in the SEC, but this was a team that many people expected to be at the bottom of the conference. They were incredibly tough, played some really interesting matchups, and even pulled off the biggest upset of the season, going and beating Alabama. Vanderbilt is bringing everybody back from last year. They are 8th in the FBS in returning production, and they are 2nd in the SEC in returning production. Offensively, it starts with Diego Pavia. Pavia may not have the brightest NFL outlook, but he's a damn good college quarterback who is tough, is a gunslinger, and he can carry this team to victory, literally. His ability with his legs is really underrated. He is a powerful runner and just has the ability to run through defenders, which you don't often see from the quarterback position. He's going to be a really fun quarterback to watch this year. And they also are bringing back Eli Stowers, who had a really good connection with Pavia last year. He proved to be one of the best tight ends in college football, and he's a true vertical threat from the slot. He's a former quarterback, converted tight end that has all of the traits that you look for, and with another year of development, he could be in for a monster season for the Commodores. But I really like some of the moves that this team made to improve the trenches. They added guard Jordan White from Liberty, who was one of the best offensive linemen in the entire portal. They added Keanu Coate from Alabama, who was a really fun defensive tackle player. And I think this is a team that just has talent. The SEC is loaded, I get it, but their over-under should not be 4.5 wins. I think that is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. They won 7 games last year. This team beat Alabama last year, and I think they're going to shatter the 4.5 win mark. I think they've got winnable in-conference games, whether it be Auburn, Kentucky, Missouri. even Tennessee, dare I say it, I think this is a easy bet to be 4.5 wins. And once again, I'm not predicting Vanderbilt to win the SEC or even be a playoff team. But if I was going to make a bet, Vanderbilt over 4.5 wins is the easiest bet on the market. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Which teams do you guys think are being undervalued in the college football season? Which teams do you think can go on a college football playoff push? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. Leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.